the trembling egg at the center of the earth that's about to explode and cause the apocalypse by spreading super intelligent spiders through the cities of the world that are going to eat all of our children and eat our feet, leaving us screaming in our hallways with blood gouting out of our feet. That's all they do is eat babies and feet, but that's enough to take civilization down, and I'm here to warn you of this impending horror that's about to happen, and along the way, hopefully, make you laugh and teach you about how important it is to come to terms with who you are and forgive yourself and recognize that, as Hermann Hesse said in his beautiful book, Demian, that to be born, you must first destroy a world. And in this case, the world you must destroy is the world of your former fear self, that terrible prison you've been trapped inside of. A prison of your own creation, where you stare mournfully out the keyhole of your cell, not knowing that the key is in your hand. And in this case, the key is recognizing that in only 3 years, an egg in the center of the earth is going to explode, and super intelligent, fear-seeking spiders are going to climb out of the volcanoes and calderas of planet Earth, and they're going to go right for either your children or your feet, more likely both. And you're going to look down, and there's going to be a chittering, super intelligent spider eating your feet, and you're going to think to yourself, man, I wish I'd learned to not be so afraid like I heard on that podcast, because I wouldn't be in excruciating pain right now watching this horrible creature devour my feet. But let's stay positive and not focus on the impending arachnid foot-devouring apocalypse, and let's enjoy podcasts. We have got a particularly wonderful podcast for you today. Trudy Goodman is here with us today. We're going to jump right into it, but first, some quick business. This episode of the DTFH is brought to you by Squarespace.com. Head over to squarespace.com/Duncan for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use offer code Duncan to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Squarespace is amazing for many different reasons. The first reason is you can sign up for it without using a credit card. You can just try it out to see if it works for you. If you're thinking about making a website and you're sort of on the fence, wondering if you should make a website or huddle there in the shadows, completely anonymous and alone. Maybe you're thinking, I don't know, do I hire somebody? Do I do it myself? How long is it going to take if I do it myself? Head over to Squarespace, try it out. You will soon realize that they have created an incredible service that allows you to assemble beautiful templates created by world-class designers. They've got amazing e-commerce functionality that lets you sell anything online. And God forgive me for saying this yet again, but to me it is truly the fulcrum upon which the entire internet sits, which is that I know someone who sells their socks online. If someone's making money selling their stinky socks online, my God, just think of that. We live in a world where there was a time when people were crawling through the cracks of Mount St. Helens looking for a cricket to eat. And now, holy shit, there's sock mongers sitting in piles of gold with freshly enameled teeth, grinning from ear to ear because they just made another $1 million on their musty, stinky socks. And friends, that's the kind of America I want to live in. Squarespace, it's got everything you need. Everything's optimized for mobile right out of the box. That might not sound impressive to you, oh youngster, but in my day, trying to get a website to fit onto all the varieties of cell phones was one of the most brutal, horrific, terrible, very expensive things you could attempt to do. You would end up with a pissed off web designer shoving a sawed off shotgun into your grandmother's beautiful breasts that your mom used to feed off of because he'd had some kind of schizoid break and he couldn't take your notes anymore, and he was just telling you to give him your money or he was gonna finish your grandma. That was a common experience for people who lived in the 90s. But now, thanks to Squarespace, you don't have to deal with that anymore. You can use Squarespace for anything, whether you're an architect, a musician, a writer, a blogger, a photographer, or just a cacophonist looking to create a little bit of chaos in the world by, say, building a website that seems to have been created by the United States government that connects, your brother or your sister to ISIS, and then, email that to them and ask them if they're aware that this website exists. There's so many beautiful pranks that could be played. P.S. I mean legal, good-spirited, fun pranks that are designed to make your friends realize how much you love them because you put this much effort into creating a little bit of mischief, not malicious pranks. Right now, if you head over to squarespace.com/Duncan, you can get a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use offer code Duncan to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. I guess the main thing is I use a Squarespace website. Anytime I upload a podcast to the internet, I use Squarespace as my main website. Check it out. It's at DuncanTrussell.com. Again, that's squarespace.com/Duncan. You'll get a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, use offer code Duncan to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. My sweet, sweet Patreon patrons, thank you so much for subscribing over at Patreon. If you subscribe at Patreon, you're going to have instant access to episodes before they hit the main feed. Not only that, you'll get commercial-free episodes, and once a month, there is a long, hour-long rambling thing. And there's other stuff that I put up there, as well as access to our beautiful Discord server. My friends, that's basically a chat room. And my friends at the Discord server, my apologies, I haven't been there for the last few weeks. I've been extremely busy, but I intend on paying a visit there soon. And I still can't talk about what I'm busy with, but boy, I can't wait to tell you guys what it is. We also have a shop, which is located... Oh, wait, Patreon is patreon.com/DTFH if you want to subscribe. We have a brand new shop located at DuncanTrussell.com with lots of new shirts and designs and really cool hoodies. The stuff there is amazing. It's the best t-shirts I've ever had. And if you want to wear sacred robes, the garments of the DTFH, all you got to do is go to DuncanTrussell.com and click on the shop. Much thanks to those of you who continue to use our Amazon link. And much thanks to any of you who are listening to this podcast. My God, thank you so much. I love you guys. And these types of podcasts, the one I'm about to release, they're my favorite kind. I don't mean to create some hierarchy of this. These are the ones I like. But Trudy Goodman is a peace worker. She is a meditation teacher. She runs a meditation center called InsightLA. She is also married to another incredible teacher of the Dharma, Jack Kornfield. And I've had the very good fortune of watching them teach at a few different Ram Dass retreats that I've been to. And she's just an amazing person who has done so many incredible things on this planet. It's just always, for me, it's incredibly healing just to get to spend a little bit of time with people like Trudy. And so I'm really excited to upload the conversation that you're about to hear. Everybody, please welcome to the Duncan Trussell Family Hour podcast. Oh, wait, before I do the intro, if you want to find Trudy, all the links you need to get to InsightLA are going to be at DuncanTrussell.com. And of course, you can Google search Trudy Goodman or InsightLA. They have a lot of great programs there. Every Sunday they have meditation. You can actually, that they live stream. So you could, if you're not in Los Angeles or if you're on the east side and you don't feel like driving to the west side, you can watch the live feeds and meditate that way. Or if you're in some other part of the planet, you could just tune in. But definitely check out InsightLA. And if Trudy happens to be in your area and something's happening, you should most definitely check her out. Okay, here we go. Everybody, please welcome to the Duncan Trussell Family Hour podcast, Trudy Goodman. Trudy, thank you so much for coming on my show. It's so great to have you in my house.
It's really fun to be here.
I have really been enjoying getting ready for this conversation, listening to you speak, and I've been very moved. It's been like I know it's going to be a great conversation when prior to the conversation, my life feels slightly better just by researching the person who I'm going to interview. And so thank you for all of the beautiful stuff that you have out there.
Thank you.
And putting it out there for us. So I wanted to start this one off with a Terence McKenna quote. I was really moved by listening to you talk about your experiences in Darfur, in the refugee camp there, and the, what's it called? Little ripples. Yeah. So I wanted to read something to you, and then I thought maybe we could just jump off of this particular diving board of a quote. This is Terence McKenna said this: "The apocalypse is not something which is coming. The apocalypse has arrived in major portions of the planet, and it's only because we live within a bubble of incredible privilege and social insulation that we still have the luxury of anticipating the apocalypse." And I want to talk with you a little bit about that, because not only, you've had this experience, a firsthand glimpse of what a refugee camp looks like in a place where there was genocide. Mm-hmm. But then also you have worked with dying people. Mm-hmm. You have the experience of teaching insight meditation. And I guess you are aware of the fact that many people don't seem to realize they're going to die, and that they're still anticipating the apocalypse, but they haven't experienced it in their life.
Well, they're not dead yet.
They're not dead yet. Or they somehow haven't, we see these pictures of people with their elderly parents, and they're just like taking it for granted their parents are still around. They haven't had the loss yet. Right? And so I wonder if we could just start off by talking a little bit about how your contact with, if the thing happening in Darfur isn't the apocalypse, well, then I don't know what the apocalypse is. For those people, that's the end of the world. And you, in one of your teachings, you were talking about how you leave your home and you're never coming back to your home. You leave your home and you're never coming. It's done.
That's right.
That really, really hit me right in the heart.
Yes.
I never thought of that.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what that's taught you, being around these people who are in this sort of existence?
Yeah, that's why I went there too, Duncan, because I have a very vivid imagination, so I could imagine what it would be like to not ever be able to go home, no longer have a home, in many cases no longer have a state, a country, anywhere you belong. And once I read a description by a Tibetan Buddhist teacher who was talking about just what you're saying, that people lack awareness of their mortality. And he was saying people don't realize, now this is a tradition that believes that there is consciousness after death, so I just say that. He said, people don't realize what it is like to have your consciousness severed from your body. And I thought, that is what it would feel like in some way to be a refugee, to have your entire consciousness and existence severed from its roots. And not only did the people, the camp that I was in was Darfuri refugees, and we were about 45 minutes from the border with Darfur, Sudan. Darfur is in Sudan, and we were in eastern Chad, right over the border.
Okay.
And 45-minute drive on a red dirt road. And there are hundreds of thousands of people now who have been in eastern Chad for 13 years.
Yes.
The genocide is still ongoing. It's as though they can't believe that the international community doesn't care that al-Bashir is still in power.
Most people here have no idea who that is.
And that, without going into the whole history of the war and and what happened, I will just say that not only did they have to leave their homes, they left their homes because the militia, the Janjaweed, would come on horseback and torch. Their homes are grass huts. This is very rural grass hut Africa. We're not talking about urban Africa.
Right.
And they're leaving with things on fire under a rain of bullets. They're not just feeling unsafe, so gee, we should move on.
They're running.
They're fleeing. And when I went to the refugee camp in eastern Chad, the leader of the community, who speaks enough English to interface with us, he explained that when he left with a lot of people, but he couldn't get his grandmother out in time. So not only are you fleeing, but sometimes family members have lost each other. So it's extremely intense. They fled at night only. They hid during the day. And when you're in the Sahel, which is the sub-Saharan, it's a very arid region. There's nowhere to hide. There's no big trees and forests. I don't know how they made it, but they made it. And they all are there in the camp. And I was stunned by the organization of the community, the pretty democratic and harmonious way that they are living in this camp. In this camp, there are about 30,000 people, and they're dotted up and down the border with Sudan.
30,000?
Yeah, in that camp.
Who's paying for this?
Well, that's the thing. The UN helped at the beginning, and the government of Chad helped, but there isn't money, so their food has been cut in half. So now everybody's hungry. They only have between 600 and 800 calories a day, which is not enough.
Just to put that in perspective, I was just at Chipotle last night. Your typical Chipotle burrito is 800 to 1,400 calories. So you're eating like
less
a sandwich a day.
You're eating a burrito, yeah.
A burrito a day.
And I went there because they were looking for a mindfulness teacher who had a background in early childhood education to help bring mindfulness into this beautiful preschool program. And the anti-genocide group called IACT, who invited me.
Wait, what's an anti-genocide group?
It's a small, I call them small but mighty.
What are they called?
It's called small I, ACT, capital A, capital C, capital T, IACT. And they asked me, and I called everybody I knew who worked with kids and knew mindfulness and said, why don't you go? They're looking for this. And I didn't really want to go. But
dangerous.
It is dangerous. It's dangerous in lots of ways. The rebels can pour over the border. And at one time, the two directors were caught in a hotel for 3 days with, bullets flying over their heads. I mean, it's not... Now it's safer because we call it Chinese Chad. We stay in a hotel out in N'Djamena, the capital. We're only there one night, but we stay in a hotel that is outside of all the Western hotels, so it's not a potential target. But anyway... Trudy,
you're de-emphasizing your heroism. I'm sorry to cut you off, but to go into a place like that it's not just like... it's actually in situations like that, things can go south so fast.
Yeah.
So fast. And they can stay south. And so the fact that you're going out there, it feels like you're de-emphasizing, and that's cool.
I think I had to de-emphasize it because maybe I wouldn't have gone, but I mean, there's no doctors, there's no medical care. And
people are sick out there. People have all kinds.
Well, the scary thing is they have a bad kind of malaria, which I couldn't take the anti-malaria medicine. So at 6 and we couldn't stay in the camp because I think at dark it's probably not that safe. So we stayed in a UN compound about a half hour away, and barbed wire and guards, and we stayed in a metal box. And at dusk, at 6, I would get in my mosquito net and I would just stay in it for 12 hours so I wouldn't get bitten. So it was
the kind of malaria out there. It kills you.
You have 5 days and then you're dead. You don't have 5 days to get treatment. I mean,
and those aren't 5 great days.
2 or 3 days.
Those are painful, brutal.
But you don't dwell on this, Duncan. If you did, you wouldn't go and do anything. And I was tormented by the idea there are 65 million refugees in the world. This was before the election.
Right.
And I just felt this is something I need to do because of that feeling of what it would be like to be not only homeless, but nowhere to go and be that's safe. And
why don't people right now, this is what I don't understand, and I mean this, when I say people, I mean me.
Yeah.
We watched this story of the refugees on our border, and it has become a political statement to say, I think we should help refugees.
That's right.
Saying that publicly now
That's right.
is become political. So if you say that now, people will be like, really? What's your plan?
Don't you believe in borders?
Do you not believe in borders?
I know.
And so you hear someone saying that, and by the way, full disclosure, this thought has emerged in my own mind. So in a more refined way, where the thought has emerged like, well, when I go to Canada, like going through that border there is almost, it's difficult. I've been detained in Canada for no reason. I don't even know why they did. They questioned me. They interrogated me. They let me through into Canada so I could do stand-up comedy. But in Canada's always, Canadian comics are always getting thrown out of the U.S. and going into Canada and coming back is like a tricky thing. So in a lighter yet equally, I would say, inhuman way, my mind has thought, well, we got to have borders. Like, what are we going to do without borders? If we don't have borders, then we don't have a country. If we don't have a country, what are we going to do? We're being taxed. Our taxes are going to people who are from another country. Shouldn't our taxes be going to schools where teachers aren't getting paid, or the kids who aren't getting enough food here in the United States? And so this terrible dehumanization of everybody on the other side of an imaginary border that got created by people a long time ago starts happening in your mind. Trudy, what do we do? How do we look at this situation in a way that is not only compassionate but pragmatic, recognizing that, what do we do?
Well, I took a lot of inspiration from IACT because they went, Gabriel Storing, who's the director, and Katie J. Scott, who's his wife, when they went, they asked the refugees, what do you want?
Right.
Now that's radical. It seems like it would make, be a no-brainer, but that's radical to go ask people, what do you want? Because the big agencies, they can't do that. They just have these top-down solutions and they give what they can. And the refugees said, we want preschool and we want soccer. We want soccer so we can belong to the world, feel some connection to the world. And we want preschool because the young kids are watching the littler kids while the parents are out trying to, grow a few things to eat or scrabble for, fuel, and they're getting hurt. The little kids are falling into the wadi and drowning, or falling in the fire and burning themselves and hurt. So they essentially wanted an educational daycare. And so what we can do is ask people, what do you want? How can we help? If everybody did one small thing, obviously not everybody's going to travel across the ocean and go into a very rural and dangerous area. But if everybody did, every time we feel hopeless or despairing or frightened or freaked out by what's going on in this country right now, if we did one thing, if we asked around, it would help us personally.
Right.
It definitely helps us. And I think it would help the world.
You're saying, so a person is listening to an NPR story on children being separated from their parents, and the sort of, which I just heard an incredible story, and it was, up until that, it was, man, it's so easy to dehumanize people. It's so terrible.
But you can't dehumanize children.
You can't.
You can't.
But you can turn them into number. You just say, there's a situation on the borders, and you go back to your job. You don't really think about it.
And I guess not everybody loves children as much as I do, so maybe they can.
People love children. People love helping. It's just in people's minds, somehow there's this ridiculous thing that is happening, which is that on the other side of the imaginary line, here's one of the things people say. It's irresponsible for these parents to be bringing illegally trying to get their children into this country. And they're saying that as though this is a recreational activity.
These parents are not coming even because they want a green card and they want to work. They're coming to save their lives. And the causes that are threatening their lives actually began in this country. So we actually have a responsibility to help. That's sort of how I feel. And I've been heartbroken, Duncan, because I don't speak Spanish, but I love kids and I've worked with kids all my life. And then I think, I want to go. I want to go and help out. I probably will go because I found somebody who wants to be my translator. I probably won't have access to kids, but there's a lot of people who are just at the border suffering.
And this is, and what we're looking at here, people are acting like this is an anomaly. And when we look at the projections for climate change, when we look at what's happening in Europe right now, where places are hitting the hottest they've ever been in recorded history, the ocean, I don't remember which ocean it is, they just measured it. It's hotter than it's ever been in recorded history.
Well, make a pilgrimage to Venice, where I live, and jump in the ocean. It's tropical. It's like swimming in Hawaii right now. I mean, Hawaii in the winter, maybe.
The oceans are heating up, and we're going to be seeing this. Yeah. This whole refugee thing, and this is where, to me, it gets particularly... I think what you're doing is incredible, and your ability to articulate is incredible, to humanize these people, because everyone in this country, people who are living anywhere there's an ocean nearby, people who are living anywhere where there's any chance that some climate-related catastrophe could happen, they act like they're not going to be refugees eventually.
I know. And that comes back to where you began, which is there's a saying that it's in the Mahabharata, Indian holy text, that what is the most wondrous thing in the world? Like the eighth wonder of the world. What is it? And it's that we see people die all around us, but we somehow never think it will happen to us.
Wow.
And that was millennia ago. This is human nature.
Right.
And it's not that we're supposed to terrorize ourselves with thoughts of our, impending death and how's it going to happen and so forth, but to realize the preciousness of life and of each other. That's what it's for. And it's a matter of learning, just learning to open our hearts and open our consciousness to see what this life actually is. And in the light of what we see, what matters most to us. And I have to say, I feel people say this, and I always thought it was sort of trite, but I feel so much more gifted by the time in the refugee camp than anything I was able to offer there. Meeting people who are so resilient, so committed to the kids and their education. These programs are now refugee run. There are young women who are teaching in the Little Ripples program who are cooking for the kids. They get one meal 6 days a week, which is often their only, nutritious meal of that day. But the kids in that program do not have orange hair, which is the sign of total protein deficiency. They have black hair. And the teachers, this one teacher, Zainab, she said, before I became a Little Ripples teacher, I didn't know. She said, I knew the words human rights, but I didn't know what they meant.
Oh, God, wow.
And now I realize that men and women have equal power, and I didn't know that before. I didn't know that women in the home and outside of the home can speak up and have a say, just like men. And when people say these things to you, it's so moving and so powerful.
Wow.
And all you want to do is go back. And I actually have wanted to go back, but we can only fit 5 people at once in a UN Jeep, and you have to be in those because it's so unsafe. And so until they, mindfulness has been established in that program. So there isn't, I trained, somebody came with me, Jocelyn Hitter came with me as an assistant teacher, and then she went back next time and taught. And I don't know if there'll be a need for me to go back, but maybe I'll go to the border. Now we have a different situation.
Right.
And everybody is, in some sense, I'm not trying to, I'll just say it. We're all refugees in some tiny sense, in the sense that we're all fleeing some kind of pain or suffering.
Whoa.
That we were either born with, or the causes and conditions in our families, or we've lost our job, or we don't have a home, or we're traumatized by having been, in the military, or the victim of a crime, or endless possibilities, right? And the practices of mindfulness and compassion and awareness and loving awareness, they really make a difference. I've seen it, just in... And it doesn't matter what culture, it doesn't matter where you are. We all have consciousness, and we all have emotions, and we all need to be able to learn more skillful ways of being with our emotions and our insane reactivity, which is the cause of most of our suffering, really.
Right.
So, I really...
How do you not be reactive? I hear you when I was listening to you talk about your experience, and I'll post the link to this wonderful talk you did with Jack, where you're talking about this Little Ripples program, and like in between,
give a shout out for IACT too,
and IACT. I'll put the
and
link.
InsightLA, because we're partners with them.
Yes, all the rivers people can go down to find you.
Yeah,
we'll be there. Trudy, I was fluctuating between beating myself up, just thinking like, Duncan, you jerk. You've been allowing your mind to sink back into this ridiculously lazy position regarding the current refugee crisis. You haven't been saying anything about it. And the stuff you have been saying has been veering in the direction of dehumanizing a group of people in some kind of weird way. Just because I don't have the solution, I have no idea what we would do. And then it was listening to your voice. This is, you'd left Darfur to go to the Ram Dass retreat in Maui.
That's right. It was just I had just been in Eastern Chad.
So you were dealing with culture shock.
Darfur.
So you had gone from this complete, the apocalypse.
I couldn't face all the food at that buffet.
Right. And I heard it in your voice. And it
makes me cry right now thinking of it.
I could hear what I heard in your voice was a very skillful suppression of what I would have made me want to sit up there and scream. Like, you guys don't understand what's happening. You're here with the ocean and the buffet, and we all are doing great. But they're over there, these children have trauma that's never going to go away, and they're not getting enough food, and their hair's turning orange. And so how do we not become, for me, it makes you want to scream.
Well, I do write certain things. I try to help people understand by saying, imagine you went camping, and then you just had to stay at that campsite for 13 years.
Oh, my God.
I try to, give people images that would help them understand and care. There's so many things to care about here and everywhere that there's really room for us all to pitch in and do something. And I do think that's the antidote to despair and rage that you're talking about. I also, I live here. I have a privileged life too. I have plenty to eat. I have to worry about not eating too much. That's my life.
Oh my God.
In America.
Right.
And
that's our problem here.
So because it's also abundant and fabulous, and then I just realized, well, that's how it is for us. How would we know? We're not being told. These folks are forgotten, and I'm just talking about a few 100,000 people amassed in Eastern Chad. There are Syrian refugees, there are people all over the world, people drowning in the seas, in the Mediterranean. I mean, I think that I keep feeling like if we weren't pouring all of our money into the military, if enough people rallied to care and share our caring and deeply listen to the people who don't see it the way we do, everything's so politicized now and polarized that I wrote one of my little weekly blogettes about diversity and inclusion, and as an organization of mostly white people, how we're looking at that and learning what are our implicit biases. And anyway, I wrote about this, and I got this very hateful response saying, you drank the Kool-Aid, and why do you feel so guilty? And that's reverse racism and
Trump derangement syndrome.
And on and on. And I thought, but if we sat down with each other and made an agreement to deeply listen and had enough, just a little bit of mindfulness that we could learn to notice when we're still caught in our, fabricated thought world of how I'm going to answer and how I'm going to rebut that argument, and just quietly listened to each other, just that is healing and powerful. And I have a friend who's I think he drank the Kool-Aid. He's a total Trump supporter. And people say to me, well, how can you be friends with him? I say, because I learned so much from him, and we listen to each other.
Right.
And we're saved by a sense of humor.
Yeah.
He's trying to get me to come to Zambia, do a program for women and girls there. And he said, when you and your team leave here, you will all be Republicans. I'm practicing my speeches so we can joke about it and have some capacity to connect, even though we don't necessarily persuade each other. That is a political, you can't, so I've caught heat on this podcast for certain guests where people are like, how dare you, now,
how
you're
dare
gonna
you,
get
like,
heat.
No, I've had people from both sides, of I guess you could say both sides of the spectrum, brilliant professor Jordan Peterson, a brilliant journalist, Abby Martin, and you have people on and put a microphone in front of their face, and Abby Martin says, "Oh, Palestine, that's an open air prison," and boom, get ready for the attacks on Twitter. How dare you give that person a voice? That person is anti-Semitic.
I know Abby. She's not anti-Semitic.
Not at all. She's brilliant. But that, or how dare you give Jordan Peterson a voice? He's against, he doesn't like trans people, or he's a, alt-right icon. And so even the concept of producing a dialogue with people who have been deemed too far on one side or the other is considered to be, do you want to go back in time and have a conversation with Hitler? Do you want to just have a nice little chat about why Jews are destroying the planet? Do you want to give a voice to these people? And I keep thinking well, number one, neither of those people are close to being, it's not a fair categorization, but also, how do you know you're about to go to war with another country? You cut off all lines of communication. That's the first thing that happens, right?
You can't hate each other if you know each other. You can disagree.
Right. You
can disagree ferociously.
Yes.
But you can't hate each other.
Right.
When you know each other.
Right.
In that way. And I'm not talking about, criminal abusers or people who've hurt you the most in this life. But I actually have a poem that I want to read because I think it speaks to this. It's a poem by Fred Lamott, and it's called My Ancestry DNA Results Came In. Just as I suspected, my great-great-grandfather was a monarch butterfly. Much of who I am is still wriggling under a stone. I'm part larva, but part hummingbird, too. There's dinosaur tar in my bone marrow. My golden hair sprang out of a meadow in Palestine. Genghis Khan is my fourth cousin, but I didn't get his dimples. My loins are loaded with banyan seeds from Sri Lanka. My uncle is a mastodon. There are traces of white people in my saliva. 3.7 billion years ago, I swirled in golden dust, dreaming of a planet overgrown with lingams and yonis. More recently, say 60,000 BC, I walked on hairy paws across a land bridge joining Sweden to Botswana. I am a bastard of the sun and moon. I can no longer hide my heritage of raindrops and cougar scat. I am made of your grandmother's tears. You conquered rival tribesmen of your own color, chained them together, marched them naked to the coast, and sold them to colonials from Savannah. I was that brother you sold. I was the slave trader. I was the chain. Admit it. You have wings vast and golden, like mine, like mine. You have sweat, black and salty, like mine, like mine. You have secrets silently singing in your blood, like mine, like mine. Don't pretend that the earth is not one family. Don't pretend we never hung from the same branch. Don't pretend we don't ripen on each other's breath. Don't pretend we didn't come here to forgive. So that poem helps me. Poets give voice to our deepest stirrings of our hearts.
Yeah.
And the reality is we are not separate. And it's tragic not to realize that.
Right. Yeah. That is beautiful. That is beautiful. That forgiveness thing is like it can feel so ambiguous, can it? What is
Forgiveness is tricky. I debated about whether to read the last line of the poem for that reason, because forgiveness, you have to be ready to forgive, and it's a process, and forgiveness is the end point. We all want to start there usually because we're spiritual people, and besides, it feels better to forgive than to be enraged and carrying around grudges and resentments and, with just being tied in knots. But the reality is that some things are unforgivable, and that often the best we can do is think of forgiveness as for freeing your own heart from these states of grudge and resentment and anger and ill will.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the best we can do. We're not going to love our enemy, but we don't have to be obsessed for our lifetime with the harm that was done to us.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is tricky. I think that
I like
people, I like it too.
No, I guess what I mean is what I'm saying is I like that poem, and I like that he said we're here to forgive is the primary thing, because I think of it as like this ultimate spiritual pull-up bar. Like when I was a little doughy kid, they used to do these monstrous exercises, which the presidential fitness.
I could never do those. Do you
remember that hell?
My daughter went through that hell. I'm too old. Thank God we didn't have that.
You get in line. I'm this like pudgy, I don't know how to put it, like a weeble wobble, essentially, right? And you get in line, and it's like there's this pull-up bar waiting for you, like looking at you, get ready.
Oh, I feel it in my stomach now.
You got to go, and because
I was a couch potato.
The swine president, I don't know who it was at the time. Whatever that monstrous person was like, a child should be able to do 3 pull-ups. And so these
humiliation, right?
Children are jumping up on that pull-up bar. They're doing like 17 pull-ups just for fun. They love it. They love the pull-ups. And then you march up to the thing. It's like not a firing squad, but it's the same feeling of like as you desperately try to just
in front of everybody.
Yeah,
too.
Right. So and I remember getting a few years ago getting a trainer, and he like brought me to the pull-up bar, and he's like, "We're gonna get you to start doing pull-ups." I'm like, "Can't do it." And he's like, "No, Duncan, I'm going to teach you how to do pull-ups." And I'm like, "I can't. It'll never happen." And so sure enough, I couldn't do a pull-up the first time. But then he's like, "Let me show you something." And he starts putting like these embarrassing, like, I don't know what they are, these straps on me or something. And so it's a little lighter. And
he gave you some support.
And then within a few weeks, Pull-ups. I'm doing pull-ups. I've liberated myself from...
Can you still do a pull-up?
I don't know, because I haven't been going to the gym, but I know that I can now. So what I mean is...
That's fantastic, Duncan.
Forgiveness is the pull-up bar. We look at it and we think, no fucking way. That son of a bitch. Are you kidding? I can't. He didn't.
Okay, but you didn't do it alone, Duncan.
Right.
We can't do it alone.
Right.
You got support. This is Maya Angelou. She's like, okay, autoplay next video, lying, thinking last night, how to find my soul a home. Where water's not thirsty and bread loaf is not stone. I came up with one thing and I don't believe I'm wrong. That nobody can make it out here alone. Mm. And then there's the refrain. She goes on. You know, you got support. We need each other. We need community. And that's actually why I started InsightLA. I came here. I was like already middle-aged. I didn't have any money. I didn't have connections. I wasn't like, young and beautiful anymore. It was like, oh no. And I was driving around in my car and I didn't understand that you have to group your errands in Los Angeles or you'll spend all day and I'd come home and I would have gone to the cleaners and bought some groceries in like 8 hours. Or it was just insane.
Yes.
I thought, if I'm this lonely and finding this so hard, what you learn when you practice mindfulness and meditation, you come to realize what I experience is what human beings experience. So I thought, okay, other people must feel this way too. Why don't we get together? Why don't we create some community together?
Yeah.
And then we need that. And just like that guy, he gave you a lift and then you could develop the strength to do it yourself.
That's right.
And it's the same with forgiveness. It's the same with mindfulness. It's the same with love. We can't do it ourselves.
I hear you say that, and I think I was just on the phone with my friend who his mother just passed away. His father died years ago. His brother, he's estranged from his brother, and thank God for Ram Dass, and thank God for people like you who've taught me, like, oh yeah, let's just be available for folks, and so I talk to him sometimes, and I've told him, just call whenever, and I talk to him. That's all.
Generous.
We just talk, and I'm so lucky. I feel really, really lucky. Like you were talking about, you go to the refugee camp, and the cliche thing is, you realize like who's helping who here. And similarly, in these little situations where we talk to people like that, and you realize like, I'm the one who should be calling you for help because your strength is giving me inspiration and your contact with reality is helping me.
Yeah.
And I think I'm so lucky this person had the guts to not be afraid to reach out to me.
Yeah, but it's not luck. It's because you listened.
Right.
We have sonar for when people are deeply listening to us.
Right.
It's so healing.
Right.
To be listened to in that way.
Right.
So that's why he came to you.
Right. But I think to myself of people listening right now who are thinking, I don't really have a Duncan to call, and I'm really alone.
Yes.
Or maybe I have people I could call, but they are not listening. What do they do? What about that? What about those, those people who are still in the forest from whatever house burnt down, whether it's a metaphorical house or an actual house, and they feel completely disconnected and alone. I just sometimes what do they do? Who do you talk to when you've got nobody?
Yeah, that's a hard one. And I think I have a friend, he's a public health doctor in Boston named Jeremy Nobel, and he just started something called the Unlonely Project. And it's really addressing what is an epidemic of loneliness in our society, just what you're talking about, looking at how can we connect? There's somebody, one of our teachers at InsightLA teaches mindful writing, and she has a writing group at a place where people who are experiencing homelessness and also mental illness can come. And So everybody comes and they do a little bit of mindfulness meditation together, and then they write. And then they read their writing to each other, and they listen to each other.
Yeah.
And the people love it. And then things happen. There's magic that happens. Like this one lady, she had been, I guess all her stuff was stolen from the place while she was sleeping. And, you know, she's all alone. God knows where she's sleeping. She woke up, but she wrote about this experience. And then these two guys in the group who were friends said, you know, come sleep under our bridge. We'll watch over you and we'll keep your stuff safe. And they reached... Now, you know, this is the kind of... I mean, it's a shame that people would have to be sleeping under bridges.
Yeah.
But creating chances for people to hear each other. I keep coming back to that. And if we don't have a place, maybe starting a place. Because if you're lonely, you know other people are lonely.
It's just
find another lonely person.
Trudy, you're a very amazing, special person. I'm thinking like in times of my life where I've been lonely, I'm not starting a center. I'm going to sleep on a mattress and try to forget life.
We didn't start with a center. We started my first sitting group. And keep in mind, I came from Boston where I had a big life. You know, I was a very well-known psychotherapist.
Yes.
I had a waiting list, line of people around the block waiting. I had my then husband, and I were pillars of a Zen community. But when I came here, I didn't know anybody, and I started my first sitting group with 2 people. Fred and Steve came, 2 people. I didn't start a center. It grew organically. It was like cooking from scratch.
Cool.
I didn't even have the idea of starting a center, Duncan.
Right.
I wanted company.
Right.
And I don't know how I found Fred and Steve. I think it was through a friend of my cousin's or something. You know, it was just
Right.
When we set an intention.
That is so cool.
To have something happen, then somehow the world seems to magically come to meet us. Have you felt that?
Yes. And it is stunning to see. It's almost as though the world is waiting for you to decide what side you're on.
And what matters most to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
How to gather your energies around what really matters and what's most important to you. And that means, you know, in the moment when you're lonely, company is what's most important to you. When you're hungry, food is what's most important.
We've got a little bit of time, and I want to close with this question, and I'm going to set the question up with a very quick story. Very quick. Oh, no, it's not even a story. You were talking about listening a lot, and you talk about listening in many of your teachings. The other night, I was at a party and ear beating somebody, like giving someone the most brutal ear beating of all time. I was talking to him about my modular synthesizers. His eyes had glazed over. This, I'm sure, doesn't happen to you because you have a regular practice. But it was like I was sitting in a giant yappy meat robot, and I lost control of the mouth function. like I couldn't stop myself from talking, and I'm yapping about modular synthesis. I'm looking at this guy.
All he's thinking is, how do I get away from this dude?
And I am thinking, how do I get away from this dude? Like, I'm wanting to get away from myself. Like, if I could have ejected from the robot to not listen. I was boring myself. So God knows how this sweet man felt, because he was really listening to me. Anyway, and this is kind of a sinister way to end the story, but it actually happened, and I didn't know the guy at all. I just met him at that party. I come to find out the next week he died in a car accident. And so, in his last moments on Earth, 15 minutes was filled up with what must have been the most rotten ear beating about modular synthesizers on Earth, and I didn't listen to him. And, it's not like I'm beating myself up or anything like that, but it does sort of if I had known that he only had a few days left to live, I don't think that I would have done that. So my question for you is, sometimes to me, I know I can listen, but sometimes I really feel like I lose the ability to listen. I get so caught up in my own bullshit that I can't listen to people anymore. And I'm faking listening. You know, like I'm nodding and looking and being intent and everything, but I'm not hearing a damn thing they say. Can you tell us a little bit about how we can cultivate the skill of listening in our own lives?
Yes. And the story you told, it also links again back to the beginning when you were talking about how we don't get it. We don't really let it in about our mortality. Because if we really did understand that this body will be a corpse.
Right.
The time of death is uncertain, but death is certain. If we really got that, we would have fewer of the kind of moments where we regret having wasted our time or somebody else's that way. And we would be more acutely, people who have a terminal diagnosis, sometimes they say this weird thing about how they're grateful because they never felt more alive.
Right.
And you think, really? But that's what they're pointing to, that they're acutely sensitive to the fleeting nature of being alive. And it's so precious, and just as horrible and brutal as the world can be, it's gorgeous and exquisite too.
Yeah.
So I think to listen to each other requires a little bit of mindfulness. We have to learn to recognize what's going on in our own minds while we're listening. We have to learn how do you be aware that you're actually thinking about something else while somebody's talking to you?
Right.
You know, because lots of times we don't even realize it. We just realize, oh, God, I didn't even hear the last paragraph.
That's right. What about that?
And then you have to pretend that you did hear it. And
I don't mean to stop you, but let's stop there just for 2 seconds because I want to hear it. Because that has happened to me many times.
Sure.
And
it's happened to me too.
So instead of lying and nodding and being like, I just heard this thing, what is a way that we could gracefully say, I'm sorry, I just completely tuned you out accidentally?
Like, I think you can just be honest and say, I was listening up until here, and then my mind just took a holiday.
Right.
Spaced out. I missed the last thing you said.
Right. Yeah.
And if you do it that way, wow, that's really amazing how that happens. I could be sitting here, nodding, looking at you.
Yeah.
And completely gone.
Yes.
To the point where I didn't even hear what you said.
Yes.
Even though my ears can hear the sounds.
Yeah.
That's a kind of wild thing if you think about it.
Yes, it is.
But we spend a lot of time that way in these sort of fugue states.
Yes.
Where what did you say? The robot?
Yeah. You're not even sitting in the robot control chamber. You're down in the bathroom.
So I think that's where I really do feel like a cheerleader for awareness. But it has to be what Ram Dass calls loving awareness. It has to be. Mindfulness can just devolve into this self-surveillance system that's riddled with judgment, if we're not careful.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's supposed to be kind.
Right.
It's supposed to be loving and caring. It's supposed to come from a place of wanting to uncover the goodness that we all have in us. We all have sanity and goodness and clarity and love and compassion. It's our birthright. These qualities are innate. They just get totally covered over. So I am a cheerleader for doing practices that help us uncover and learn what it is that covers over our capacity for radiant presence with each other.
Right.
And usually it's that we are lost in thought. We're in our encapsulated thought world, but we don't know how to recognize that even.
Right.
And that's where, I'm sure there are other ways, but the way that I've learned and practiced my whole life has been this way of mindful awareness.
When we sit and meditate, they say meditation is the practice is practicing for death. But I like now you're
practicing for life.
Practicing to listen.
Yeah.
I love that. Continue. I'm sorry to cut you off there.
No, I think that's all I would say, except I was intrigued by what you said about practicing to listen, because in a way, listening is how we connect with our aliveness. Like listening to our own bodies, listening to the sounds of life around us, wow. That grounds us, in the present moment, listening to our own inner voice and intuition. Every time I override that intuition, it's a disaster. Every time, Duncan.
Yeah.
I did it this year, recently.
You did?
I was in a Tabata class. I was just totally overdoing it. I had done an hour of water exercise, and then I did an abs class, and then I went to the Tabata. And then she took us out on the sidewalk to do these sideways jumps.
Yep.
And I heard this voice in my head. It said, let's skip this one. You're tired, so skip this one. But I went out anyway.
Yeah.
And we were on cement, and we were going fast, and I tripped on the sidewalk crack and slammed my back into the cement and broke my back.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
I remember when you were at the retreat, saw me. I saw you.
You saw me. It was only 2.5 weeks later that I came to Maui.
With a broken back.
Uh-huh. Well, you saw me. I had to lie down on the stage.
Yeah.
I couldn't sit up.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, the more, it seems to me from my own life, like the more sensitive I get and the more I know, what was it, John? Instant karma, it comes hard and fast when I overlook what I know to be true and just forge ahead. So I think that deep listening protects our aliveness too.
Wow. Listening is the connection to the universe. It's the thing that wow, it's like a weird, that they say when we breathe, we're connecting by breathing in everything and breathing. But then when we listen, it's almost a form of respiration, isn't it?
Receiving aliveness. Yeah. Aliveness in the form of your voice or in the form of the stillness in this room. Yeah. Receiving it. Mm.
What a joy to get to chat with you. Thank you so much for this conversation.
My delight, Duncan.
I will have all the links where people can find you, but do you have anything coming up at InsightLA?
Yes, I do. We have Joseph Goldstein coming Monday night, one of the great icons of Buddhist meditation. And then we have a really unknown person who's terrific named John Lockley. He's a South African Sangoma, which is a traditional healer and medicine man. And he's doing a day-long on August 16th. And he wrote a book called The Way of the Leopard Warrior about his journey to becoming this. It's insane. He's a white South African.
I met him at the Ramdas retreat.
Yes, you know him.
Yeah.
Okay,
cool.
So John is coming August 16th. George Mumford, my beloved friend, who wrote The Mindful Athlete, is coming in September. So we have great people coming. And then every Sunday morning, we have a live stream between 10 and 12. And when I'm in town, I teach it. When I'm not in town, other wonderful InsightLA teachers are there. And if you aren't able to, physically battle whatever distance, if you're living in a faraway place, you can always join us to meditate and hear some teachings, and you can ask questions through the live stream and be part of our community that way.
Beautiful.
At InsightLA.
Wonderful. I'll have all the links you need. That was Trudy Goodman, everybody. All the links you need to find Trudy will be at duncantrussell.com. Much thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this episode, and much thanks to you for listening. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you real soon.